IVM.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. I am your host this week, Ashwin, and I'm joined by, of course, Varun from Singapore. Varun, welcome to the show. Thanks again for guesting again after the second week, right? But we're without DJ this week, who I think he was available, but it's still just in denial and a little bit of mourning about MS Dhoni. But Varun, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I think, you're right. DJ's probably gone too hard in the last week about Dhoni memories and Dhoni tweets, so he probably just couldn't get on the podcast today.
Yeah, I think we have a lot to cover, and I think he put out a great tweet about asking for Dhoni memories, and there's some nice things that came back. But, I mean, really, truly, what was Dhoni's retirement for DJ is essentially Suresh Raina's retirement for you, right? So how have you been coping with that? That's been big.
It has been big, man. Like, Suresh Raina doesn't have that many vocal fans about him, but what is great is a lot of people have come out in support of him as well. I mean, he served his nation too. He was a great team player. And I think we'll talk about it a little bit later in the episode. But yeah, man, it's been emotional. I think as much as I'm vocal for Raina, everyone knows I always support the underdogs or people, or somebody different, right? Who everyone else doesn't support. But seriously, the Dhoni emotion in the last 1 week, even for me, it's been just crazy. Like, I've just been sitting and reading up about stuff about Dhoni.
Okay, so hold that thought. We're going to come to it in a little bit. There's a lot going on in the world of cricket, which is nice to say. But obviously, England, Pakistan, as we record this, it's on day 3 of the final test match. Seems like it's going England's way, but we'll cover that. The CPL has kicked off this week. So for me, I know, Varun, the times are pretty unfortunate for you because it's basically both matches played middle of the night. But for me, that's a great time zone. It's nice to watch. I know DJ was watching a lot of it as well. And the day of recording this, or on the day of release, we are less than 1 month from the IPL. After losing it in March and April, did you ever think we'd see this? Did you at some point, did you lose hope that we'll have an IPL this year?
I thought it would be much later. I thought it would probably be a November launch for the IPL this year. So I was always in my head thinking, man, it's 2 months more than I really wanted it to be. But I always knew that there'll be an IPL. I think what kept me going is just that now there's going to be 2 IPLs within 6 months. So I think that's what kept me going, and that's the exciting part.
Yeah, I love that. You've been saying that since day one. Is if it happens in the September-October time period, when we believe there'll be a 2021 IPL in the April-ish time period again. So lots to cover. Let's jump right in. Varun, have you been following the England-Pakistan series at all? Obviously, we know that at the time of recording this, we're knee-deep in the 3rd test match. England won the first one, which, went pretty well, was exciting, kind of a good return to test cricket after a while. And then the second test was drawn, which is incredibly disappointing because of rain, and now we're in the 3rd test. So let's talk about that second test match, right? We talked about the first on this show before. As fans who have flown to England before to watch cricket, especially talking about the 2019 World Cup, and then sitting at the ground an entire day waiting for rain, are we ever going to get past this as a sport? What's the solution for scheduling cricket in the July through September time period in England and just watching games get rained out?
I think there's no solution, man. I think it's incredibly frustrating, more so this year than any other year. I mean, we were there in New Zealand, India-New Zealand, when the game got rained out. We were really disappointed. But I think this year more than ever, because England's the only team that's actually started cricket during this whole COVID-19 fiasco. And it's been incredibly difficult as a fan to watch and plan it, right? Because honestly, the timings work for all of us. Even from the corporate world, is probably the best location, which, US, Asia, and Europe, it works for all. So it's been incredibly frustrating that we couldn't even get 2 innings done. The match was drawn. It's been a kind of stop-start. And honestly, I thought that in the first and probably even the second test, Pakistan was playing some pretty good cricket. And so that's why I personally was very excited to see what happens in the 3rd test. But, well, now we'll share a little bit about what happened in the 3rd test.
Yeah, so let's jump straight to that, right? Coming in, a couple of interesting things. Zach Crawley comes out at 1 down. I think you had mentioned once before, I think maybe when we were previewing England, West Indies, that, obviously not as well known a figure as, let's call it Joe Root or any of the rest of the order. And, he walks in at number 3, comes out, makes 267. It was his first century, I believe, right? So absolutely magnificent for a young guy. To be honest, in England, a lot of players don't get the chance to play for their nation till they're a little bit older. And here he got a chance to play and he's come out and made a double. And then just as interestingly, Jos Buttler, who many, many, many fans, many podcasts, many cricket fans, many people on Twitter have been saying doesn't belong in Test cricket. He had a rough game. He's had a rough series behind the stumps. So two things I want to ask about Buttler, but let's come to the first about the two batsmen, right? Buttler makes 152, England get to 583, essentially sealing the game, at least from the likelihood of losing at 583, right? So at the worst case, it would be a draw. But talk us through that. I know you were following the Crawley innings a little. How magnificent for a young guy, I think he's 22, to come out and make 267.
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. I've been watching this match on and off. Whenever the rain is allowed, it's been so start-stop that it's again been frustrating. But Crawley has just been amazing, man. I was reading up a little bit about him. He's 22 years old. He's batting at number 3 for England. This is his maiden Test century. So two things, right? Firstly, for England, I think on a maiden Test century, only one person is above him. Somebody made 287. So this is right up there in terms of your first century. Yeah, and the second thing is really for him to come out and, I think the stat was he's played 11 innings before this for a total of 300 and something runs. And now in his 12th innings, he's made 267. So it just shows you what a mammoth total this is. And to me, it's interesting because, England has got a fairly new 1, 2, 3, right? Burns, Sibley and Crawley. And actually, I think Crawley has probably made his way in only because Stokes is not playing. So it makes a very interesting debate as to if Crawley wants to stay in this team, does he consider opening? And I mean, it'll be interesting. I know we do know people who have made a triple century as well, like a Tarun Nair, and then you never heard about him later. So it'll be very interesting to see how England kind of nurtures this guy. He's very young. And yeah, I hope he does well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And so let's talk about Jos Buttler then, right? Really, really controversial. Does he belong on the team? Does he not? Ben Foakes, an outstanding wicketkeeper. When he's gotten his chances, he's done well. But Butler's been backed. And so as a selector and a skipper, you always love when you back a player a little more than the public and the press is willing to give them a leash, and then they come out and perform and sort of repay the favor for being supported. So, I mean, you can't argue with crossing 150. I noticed today he took a great catch off of a Dom Best delivery as well. So is there something about when you make runs when you get runs under your belt, your wicket keeping picks up as well, just because you got a little bit of a jump in your step, or you're just feeling a lot better?
Yeah, I think it's all confidence and momentum. So for me, that's quite clear, right? Buttler, when he performs, he will do better as a wicketkeeper. He'll do better on the field, more aware, more alert. But the thing with Buttler is, you said it right. England have invested so much in him over the last 4 years. And it is like, he is paying dividends. So there's no doubt. I personally love the guy. I think he's changed the face of England cricket, especially in the lower order. But you can't help but think in Test matches, he's always just 1 or 2 innings away from being dropped, right? And all the ex-England captains have also come out and said his glove work has been shoddy. He's cost Dom Best a lot of wickets in this series and the West Indies series as well. So it's kind of like I draw a comparison with Shikhar Dhawan, right? In India, he always in Test matches used to make these big scores and then go overseas and fail. So Buttler seems to be in that similar boat, although I do really like him. But I feel like he's always 1 innings away. So I'd love to see him be a little bit more consistent, but really, between Crawley and Buttler, they just turned the screws on Pakistan completely. And I do want to say, I think Pakistan started off well, right? They got Rory Burns at 12 for 1, Sibley 73 for 2. By the time Joe Root and Ollie Pope fell, they were 127 for 4. So at home, on day one of a Test morning, you'd take 127 for 4 and you'd say it's the bowling team's kind of victory on that day, or at least for the first 2 sessions. But Pakistan then just kind of lost momentum. I don't know if they gave up. As these 2 batsmen batted on and on, they just completely took the game away. And I think that was disappointing for me, right? You've got class bowlers. You've got Shaheen Afridi, Mohammad Abbas, Naseem Shah doing really well. You've got Yasir Shah, and they just couldn't come back from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Pakistan has a very talented but very young bowling attack. So maybe this is also an element of experience as well. But on the opposite end of the young bowling attack is a man who started this match at 593 Test wickets. He's now at 597. So obviously Jimmy Anderson came out, picked up the first 4 wickets, and arguably has put his team in a position where it's likely, I'd say, at the end of day 3, they're gonna win it, or at least will draw it. But Jimmy Anderson, 4th highest wicket taker, 3 away from getting 600 wickets. I mean, just for context, that would be that he's number 4 on the list. The top 3 are Murali, Shane Warne, and Kumble. So all spinners, all who get to put in a lot more overs, much less stressful on the back, the shoulders, just physically draining. I mean, how incredible a cricketer is Jimmy Anderson for our generation?
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. And I love the way he came out. I think he knows he doesn't have a test match for the next 3 to 4 months. He has to try and get the 600 in this game. Otherwise, it's going to be, it'll be quite a wait, right? And there's no doubt he's going to get it. It's just that with probably 15 wickets to go, he needs to take 3 out of those 15. I think the odds are pretty good. So I'm going to favor Jimmy to get that 600. But no doubt, Ashwin, I mean, even Nasser Hussain said this, that for somebody like Jimmy Anderson, a pace bowler, to come out day in and day out, bowling 5 days in a row, match after match, it takes a toll on your body. But despite the pain he goes through, he just gets up and comes out and gives it 100%. And the funny thing is, I think after the first test, he bowled pretty bad, and people were calling for him to retire and stuff. So it just shows you how harsh the public is. But bowlers like James Anderson have got to retire on their own terms.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And again, as a reminder for our listeners, like Stuart Broad didn't get picked in the first match against the West Indies, then came back and won man of the match. So, there's something to be said for Anderson and Broad. I completely agree. We've talked a lot about this show about when a player's time has come, etc. But Jimmy and Stuart obviously have a lot more to give. So what a pleasure to be able to watch Jimmy Anderson bowl and just some outstanding bowling. Right, so just to wrap up on the England-Pakistan series, Varun, continuing the trend with England, the T20s start. This test match ends on Tuesday. The T20s kick off on Friday. So really exciting that there's going to be more cricket coming from England-Pakistan. What I think is interesting is England has maintained a completely separate squad, right? So Owen Morgan captains that side. They have Jason Roy, completely different set of players coming in. Whereas Pakistan has not done that, right? Babar Azam who's playing in the test match. He's the skipper of the T20 squad. But Pakistan is number 7 ranked in the test team. So arguably, you expected England to win the test series. They're the number 4 side in the T20. So any predictions? They have 3 T20s coming up. Do you think it's going to be a closer series or Pakistan's going to put up a good fight?
Yeah, it definitely is. We know Pakistan in shorter formats of the game are unpredictable. We know they perform even better in England as compared to any other location in the world. So I think Pakistan is going to put up a fight. I think you're going to expect Babar Azam to come out strong, leading the team there. And I'm still going to predict a 2-1 for England, but I think it'll be a hard-fought series. And I'm personally looking forward to T20 cricket.
Yeah, so speaking of T20 cricket, there's been a little on, as I mentioned, with the CPL. So it's early. I'm not going to spend too much time double-clicking on results, etc., because there's a lot more cricket to play. But there have been some pretty exciting matches. But what I want to chat about is some of the interesting sort of observations in the CPL that I've had, at least, as we think about leading into the IPL. So Varun, I know you haven't watched it. I'm not going to put you on the spot on this. But, so one thing, for example, let's talk about the crowds, right? I think transparently, they've done a really good job with the broadcast experience, right? They've got crowd noise behind, they've got graphics on the screen and music playing when there's a 6 or a wicket, etc. But you can tell it is different for the players, right? Steve Smith earlier today came out and talked about how he relies on the crowd to egg him on. He said that before. Kohli has said that before. So I guess first question, in the CPL, I think it took a couple of games for teams to adjust to the fact that there's no crowd, but there's still millions watching you from home, and you have to bring that intensity. So do you think we're going to see that same sort of sentiment in the IPL, where it takes players a while to adjust to not having huge crowds in the stands?
Yeah, it will. Also because you play in India, and India, the crowds are crazy. There's not a seat empty. Every 6 or 4 or wicket is cheered as if it's a World Cup final, right? So it's going to take time. I think players will have to adapt to this. You'll have to realize that you're kind of playing just with yourself now. The motivation has to come from within. I'm sure 90% of the motivation comes from within anyway, but the last 10% has to come from within. Although I think from a broadcast perspective, I'm pretty sure that IPL is the biggest T20 tournament there is on a yearly basis. So what's happening is the England-Pakistan T20 series, the England-Australia series coming up in September, the CPL, all of this will give the IPL guys and the broadcast people a very good idea and some data on what's working, what's not working, feedback from viewers, feedback from players. I think they'll get it right, but yes, it will take time. And to be honest, even as a viewer, it's going to take time.
Yeah, and I think the second piece I wanted to chat about the CPL is, do some of those players who are finishing off the CPL and then going to play the IPL, do some of them get an edge, right? Rashid Khan has been bowling. Sunil Narayan has been batting really well. And then selfishly, for the listeners of our show, they all know we're Delhi Capitals fans. Kemo Paul has been bowling pretty well, picked up a 4-for, and Shimron Hetmeyer, who the Delhi Capitals picked up this past year in the auction, has made 250s already, batting outstandingly well. So let me use this to pivot and ask you, Varun, what are you most excited about the IPL in a month? From a Delhi fan standpoint, from a cricket fan standpoint, and obviously from a huge IPL fan standpoint, what are you most excited about?
I mean, it's very exciting to be able to watch cricket. Just to answer your last question, right? I think the players who are coming from CPL are going to have an edge, because if you noticed, I don't know if you saw on social media, KL Rahul actually came up and said that he was having nightmares and woke up in the middle of the night thinking that he's forgotten how to pick the line and length of the bowling, right? Because it's been so long. So this year, more than ever, you're going to need that match practice. You've got people like Yusuf Pathan type of players. I can only remember his name offhand right now, but they don't play the whole year round necessarily, and IPL then becomes important for them. But this year, they've not even got nets. They've not got practice. They're trying their best to keep fit. I mean, I'm following these guys on social media. You're seeing Shreyas Iyer, Suresh Raina. They're all stuck in a room for quarantine in a hotel in Dubai. They've got their weights. They've got their equipment for fitness. Everyone is doing it. I think, to be honest, what's most exciting is just to be able to watch. I mean, we're an Indian cricket podcast, so I can say this, but to be able to watch the Indian cricketers out there again, to be able to watch Dhoni and Raina, to be able to think about Kohli and how he wants to chase his first IPL win. A lot of people have said the grounds in Dubai suit RCB's style of playing. So it's going to be interesting to see the Kohli and AB de Villiers partnerships, Dhoni-Raina partnership. It's going to be exciting to see the Pandya brothers out there again. Bumrah, we saw a video of him bowling in the net. So generally excitement all around. And then lastly, I think I'm very excited to see what the new Delhi team is going to look like, because, we've already started seeing a little bit of Ricky Ponting coming out and talking to Ashwin and saying he's going to have a hard talk with him about Mankading. I know DJ and all of us got very emotional about that. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how the Delhi team lines up.
So let's chat that quickly before we take a break. Two things you mentioned there. One is the Bumrah video in the nets. That was just outstanding. I think I watched it 3 times just to watch him run in and bowl. And arguably in the nets, it's more exciting to see batsmen, right? Like you see the stroke play, you hear the batting, but what is it about Bumrah, or just our Darth of cricket we've seen, or was it the editing? Was it something about that video, right? And we can post a link to it. But I was just so glad to see Bumrah charging in. There were a couple of bouncers in there. There were a couple of Yorkers at the bat. Whoever the batsman was had to dig out. So how awesome was that?
It was great. Could you figure out who the batsman was?
I couldn't. I thought about it. Although I watched it like 7 a.m. my time and my eyes were half open. So I'm going to give myself credit for not. Who was it?
No, I couldn't figure it out.
Okay.
I couldn't figure out who it was. It definitely wasn't the Pandya. So, and it wasn't Rohit Sharma either. So it was great, man. It was great to watch it. What I love about that video, and again, we need to post it for context, is that you had some front-on videos, and then you split the screen, and towards the later of the video, they showed the batsman just facing, I think, 10 Yorkers in a row from Bumrah. And they maybe got one away, which I would say is past slips to the boundary. But otherwise, 8 were Yorkers, 1 was bowled, and just 1 got away. So I think it's that Yorkers that really Bumrah practices. And it shows that it pays off.
Okay, last IPL topic. Let's talk about this Ricky Ponting thing, right? In the media, in a press conference, Ricky Ponting, who's the coach now of the Delhi Capitals, has said he's going to have a talking to with Ravi Ashwin, who's the new Indian leader of the Delhi Capitals, about Mankading and how it's against the spirit of the game. So obviously we have talked endlessly in this show about how we thought Ashwin did nothing wrong. The game is skewed towards the batsman, yada, yada, yada. What was going on? What is that about? Why would a coach come out and talk about something like that against his senior player? Was there context that I'm missing on that? Or Varun, what did you think? I know DJ was furious on our WhatsApp chat.
Yeah, I was furious as well. I thought it was bullshit. It got my blood boiling. I mean, we all remember the test match where he claimed a bump ball catch. He gave Ganguly out when the umpire looked at him. It was just disgusting, if I can say so myself. But partly, I think the only thing I don't like about the Delhi team is that Ponting is our coach, because I've hated his guts. I mean, having said that, I was also discussing with a friend that Ravichandran Ashwin is in such a bad situation here, right? Because he's new to the team. He's not a captain. Yes, I think I respect him because he gives off a piece of his mind. So I think if Ponting is going to have a hard talk with Ashwin, he doesn't know what's coming, because Ashwin is probably going to tell him that he doesn't need to get the spirit of cricket from especially a person like Ricky Ponting. But the sad part is Ashwin is new to the team. So I kind of suspect he's going to let it go as well. If Ponting does act over smart and brings us up in a larger forum or a one-on-one, I think Ashwin will give it back to him. But So what happens when you're new in the team? If Ashwin was captain of that same Delhi Capitals team, I don't think Ponting would have come out and made this statement.
Yeah, but here's the thing. They didn't bring Ashwin in just for his off-spin, right? They brought him in you have to believe they brought him for his tactical prowess, for his leadership, even though they've left Iyer as captain, which I think was the right call. Like, do you see a world where Ashwin doesn't make the 11, given his caliber as a cricketer and his IPL history? I can't see a world where he's not in the 11, right?
I mean, I don't know, right? That's what I'm saying. The Delhi Capitals, and we should discuss this on the next episode maybe, but the Delhi Capitals 11 is, it's not going to be that easy, man, because you've got Amit Mishra as well, who I think has picked up more wickets than Ashwin in the IPL, if I'm not mistaken. So you have an Amit Mishra there who is great with the ball, has some great IPL stats, but is pretty useless with the bat. You've got Axar Patel, who is so-so with the ball and so-so with the bat, I would say bits and pieces cricketer. And then you've got Ravichandran Ashwin. So Delhi's not going to play 3 spinners. Do they play 1? Do they play 2? Remember, part of Delhi's issue is also like India. Your top 5 or 6 guys don't bowl. So Kimo Paul becomes a very important win for us. And you never know, right? So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a full episode about Delhi, which we probably will sometime soon. But just to set the record about what you said, you're right. Mishra has taken the second most wickets in the IPL. He's got 157. But Ashwin is number 7 with 125. So not that far behind. And by the way, Mishra's average is 24.1. Ashwin's average is 26.4. So you're right, slightly behind. But then what value does Ashwin add as first off spinners in general are a little bit behind, right? I guess Bhaji's up there, but Bhaji and Ashwin have almost the same stats. Bhaji's just played more games. Piyush is up there because like spinners do better. So all that to say, like what other value does Ashwin add as a batsman, as a strategist, as a leader? So anyway, you can see the Delhi Capitals discussion gets us all riled up. Lots of great IPL conversation to be had. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back for the second half of the show where we talk a little bit more about Dhoni, Raina, and some other things going on.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another amazing week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So another really fun week on the network. I don't know if you saw this, but Varun Thakur was on Advertising is Dead. That was a really, really fun episode. Besides that, we've had some great guests all over the place. We had Ram Madhvani on Cyrus Says. We had Saurabh Mukherjee, a legend in the finance space. He was on Pesa Vesa. He and Anupam have co-written a book, so definitely do check out that episode and go buy their book too. I mean, like, that would be another great thing to do. Uncle Pleasted had a really, really cool episode with hosts of our other show, Mr. and Mrs. Binge Watch, Anirudh and Janice. They were talking about celebrity culture and how that's progressed for the last few years. And yeah, it's just been a really, really great week. One episode I do want to shout out. A couple of weeks ago, Pulyabazi did an episode which was just amazing. They were talking about the letters between Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore. Do check those out. Those were really good. But with that, let me get you back to your show.
Welcome back to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. If you missed that first half for any reason, you'll see we're already getting fired up and riled up about the IPL that's just under a month away. But for now, we want to deep dive a little more into the 2 massive retirements that happened this past week. So MS Dhoni and Suresh Raina. So Varun, let me first ask you, we put a tweet out about some of our favorite memories. We each shared our favorite memories on last week's show. But the Prime Minister, Modi, sent a letter to MS Dhoni. And, that's been making the rounds now. So a week in, what is the emotional reaction for you been like? Anything change? Anything sunk in? Any new reactions over the past week about the retirements?
It's just been a little more calm. I think I've kind of taken the time to actually absorb what Dhoni did for Indian cricket. The only captain in the world to have won all 3 ICC trophies. He took India to number 1 in test match rankings. India has got to numerous semi-finals and finals under him. So to me, it was a little bit about taking a step back and just realizing what this guy has done for the game. I know you saw MS Dhoni, the movie, for the first time last week. What did you think about that?
It made me emotional. I made the mistake of watching it Sunday night, which was my time, which was just after the announcement. It was perfect to watch. It was just an outstanding timing. But yeah, it definitely made me emotional. And by the way, that movie ends at 2011, right? He did a lot in 13, of course, as well. But it was outstanding to relive some of the memories and just think through some of the impact he had on the game. Sometimes controversial, but always high impact.
Yeah, and so adding to that list, I think he's taken Chennai to the playoffs every single season of the IPL that they have played. So it's been very interesting, right? I think for me, couple of things I didn't realize that for India, he's got the highest test average batting in the, I would say, number 7 or lower. He's got the highest batting average at number 6 or higher. Obviously, he hasn't played there enough. But, I mean, these are just cricket info things that I'm reading out, right? Interesting coincidences as well. He got run out in his first innings ever in ODI. He got run out in his last innings ever in an ODI.
Let's not talk about that last innings, man. That's some seriously emotional stuff.
No, it's just interesting when you read the coincidence in hindsight. His first match as captain was in the 2007 T20 World Cup, and that was a tie. His last match as captain is against Afghanistan in 2018, and that was a tie. So it's just very interesting as you start reading about Dhoni. And you mentioned the letter from Modi. I think it's great, right? I can't remember if Sachin got a letter from the Prime Minister at that time. I'm sure he would have, but it was great to see that letter as well. It was clearly written by somebody who's a MS Dhoni fan. And I think it talks a lot about his journey. It talks about the 2011 final, humble beginnings in a small town, spirit of India, what he's done for the youth of the nation. And yeah, it's been a great week. It's been a great week because after the emotion, you kind of let it sink in and then just celebrate him.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And again, I think the more discussions you have, the more it was time, right? Like DJ said it right. He was going to be 40 by the time he could next play potentially for India, etc. So it's the right time, but obviously a little bit emotional. I'm going to wrap up this segment with sharing some Dhoni memories that we got off of Twitter, and Varun, I'll let you react to some of them, etc. But so the question was, tell us your favorite MS Dhoni moment. So go ahead.
It probably won't matter because our memories suck. So we're going to miss DJ on this show, but let's see.
No, I'm going to remind you. You're going to remember them as I tell you about them, right? So the first was a lot of people have talked about the 2018 Chennai victory where everybody was celebrating and running around and cheering, and he was playing with his daughter Ziva, right? That was a nice moment, just captured on camera. Just told you about the man he is more than just a cricketer. The second one that came up from at Shankar Steak, which was when he let Kohli score the winning run in the 2014 World T20 semi-final. I think you saw that on Kohli's video where he posted
Kohli tweeted it as well.
That was really something. And I loved Kohli's tributes as well. There were definitely a couple that I don't specifically remember. Then there was one which I didn't directly remember, but obviously the context makes sense, where Arnab Bhattacharya has tweeted the quote, "Dheere dal de, ek chakka kha ke dikha," which means bowl it slow, don't worry, get hit for a 6, which apparently he said to Jadeja. And just like, do you remember that moment or moments like that?
I remember moments like that. I mean, there's a video circulating that talks about Khel and Kuldeep and how he literally told them what to do every ball leading up to a wicket in their 4th or 5th ball. I think there was an interesting one I read where, Joginder Sharma bowled the final over in that T20 World Cup 27 final, and his first ball was a wide. His second ball, or essentially first ball of the over because of the wide, Misbah hit for 6. And I think we all saw Dhoni's run up to Joginder Sharma straight away, right? Directly across the pitch to his bowler. And I think, everyone's wondering what he said. I think what he said is just, you've bowled 100 times, 1,000 times in the net. Just believe in cricket. Cricket is not going to let you down. And it's things like that when your leader says that to you, you're just motivated to do it, man. You're just motivated to continue.
Even as you're saying it, I'm feeling chills down my spine. Like even as you're reliving those moments, right? So lots of those, not just about Joginder, but as you said, to Kuldeep as well, just giving advice about, like when he told Trent Bolt when Kuldeep was bowling against Trent Bolt, he said, "Idhar se dal sakta hai," like just move ball from the other side. A lot of those moments, a lot of those visual memories of him with the gloves running up to the other side to the bowler, arm around him as he's going to his run up. And so it's interesting. Obviously, many, many batting memories. Last ball 6s, the moment where he came down the track and then did a full-length stretch and a split almost to get his toe back into the crease. Right? There's some of those visuals.
Yeah, he was quite an acrobat. I mean, he was stopping the cut shot at one point with his thighs because he was stretching his leg out. So effectively, you removed the cut shot for batsmen.
Unreal, right? Like the amount. And then so many wicket-keeping moments as well when he, when you see him as the ball leaves the bowler and him move down the leg side to be ready to catch that ball, which most wicketkeepers won't get. So that presence of mind, that judgment. I mean, thank you all for writing. And there's so many good responses. Obviously, the one that came up most was Dhoni finishes it off in style. India lift the World Cup after 28 years. And it's the Indian captain who is absolutely magnificent on the night of the final. So thank you, Ravi Shastri, for making those words ring in our ears forever. And obviously, outstanding memories. It's just been a fun week, I think, being able to remember Dhoni and Raina. So absolutely awesome. interestingly, on the topic of retirements, right? Irfan Pathan put out a really interesting tweet today. So Varun, you and I were talking about this before the show, but where he essentially said something to the effect of many people are talking about a farewell game for retired players who didn't get a proper send-off from the game. And obviously because of COVID, Dhoni was one of them, right? Arguably, he would have got a farewell game where he would have been celebrated and revered and all that. And so he said, how about something like a charity come farewell game from a team consisting of players who retired without getting a farewell game versus the current Indian team, right? So I'm going to run down the list and then Varun, tell me your reaction. So these are all players that Pathan says didn't get a farewell game but are now retired. So openers, Gambhir and Sehwag, Dravid at 1 drop, Lakshman at 2 down, Yuvraj at 3 down, Suresh Raina and Dhoni at 4 and 5 down. And then you're running on your bowlers, Irfan Pathan at 6 down, Agarkar 7, Zahir Khan at number 10, and Pragyan Oja at number 11. So that's a pretty formidable side, isn't it?
Yeah, except for Pragyan Oja. Everyone else is pretty formidable. But it actually looks like the 2011 World Cup team. I mean,
it really
Dravid
does.
Dravid and Lakshman weren't there, but it's been fantastic. But, you know, I've always said this, that players don't get to retire on their terms. And so you can see that people like Irfan Pathan really did a lot for the game. He had huge potential. And so maybe this will be a really nice way for BCCI to come out and do that, right? And some people have also said that it's a good opportunity for the current Indian team to get practice as well, especially after COVID. So it's really interesting. It would be a cool thing if it did happen. But yeah, I don't know if it will.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to wrap up this week's show with 2 things that happened this week in the world of cricket in terms of recognition and rewards for players, right? So first is from the international standpoint, from the ICC, just before we released this episode, they announced 3 new inductees to the ICC Hall of Fame. The first is Zahir Abbas. The second is Lisa Sthalekar, Australian all-rounder. And then the third is Jacques Kallis. So all 3 formidable nominees, outstanding contributors to the game of cricket, just exceptional players, right? But Varun, I'm going to ask you specifically about Kallis, because arguably for me, having watched you play fantasy cricket over the years, Raina and Kallis were both neck and neck in terms of your 2 favorites, right? So Raina probably edges him out because he's Indian, but thoughts on Jacques Kallis being in the ICC Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's late. Like, for people in my generation, we didn't get to see Kapil Dev actually play. But outside of Kapil Dev, I would say he is the greatest all-rounder to have played post-1990, maybe, if I can make that claim, in the last 30 years. I remember distinctly a stat, and I need to find the numbers, but I think there was a stat that said he has almost as many runs as Sachin in Test match cricket and almost as many wickets as Zahir Khan. So if you put that into perspective, and I'm sure we can check, right? But if you put that into perspective, that shows you how great Jacques Kallis was. So it's very late for him, but somebody who batted at number 3 and bowled at number 3 and did so with kind of so much greatness, I think it's just fantastic.
Yeah, so let me add on that quickly. He's 3rd on the list of highest test run scorers, right? Sachin had 15,900, Ricky had 13,300, and Jacques Kallis had 13,289. 1 more run than Rahul Dravid, who had 13,288. Incredible, right? And then on the wickets list, you're right. He picked up 292 wickets. Ishant Sharma has 297. Brett Lee has 310. Trent Bolt today has 267. Tim Southee has 284. So these are pure bowlers, full-time bowlers.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's up there with them, right? So obviously he's played more matches as well. But I think that the soundbite I read, which was just awesome, is the only cricketer to have the double of 10,000 runs and 200 wickets in both tests and ODIs.
Yeah.
Just think about that, right? Over 25,000 runs and nearly 600 wickets in international cricket. Unreal. I think you said it right. It's probably late for him. He was well deserving of that. And then the other
there's no triple double in cricket, right?
You're talking about basketball again, aren't you? The Raptors game is on tonight. I'm having some fun banter with one of our listeners on Twitter who's a Boston Celtics fan. So we'll see how this goes. Maybe next week I'll be celebrating more, or I'll be disappointed and being quiet about basketball. So we'll see how.
But you're just happy. You're just happy that there's live sports on after 100 days.
I'm just thrilled that there's some live sports on again after. So. Anyway, we're going to wrap up with the Indian awards that came out. So 2 big ones, obviously. The slightly smaller one is the Arjuna Award, which was awarded to many sports people, but the 2 cricketers are Ishant Sharma from the men's side and Deepti Sharma from the women's side. So I'll ask you about that. And then the Khel Ratna, which is one of the biggest awards you can get, Virat Kohli's won it previously, was awarded this year to Rohit Sharma. So interestingly, all three Sharmas getting awards.
Yeah, I was going to say, what do you think? What do you think was the criteria for this year's award?
Yeah, your last name had to be Sharma for you to be eligible. But let's talk about Rohit winning the Khel Ratna, right? Like, there's been back and forth. We know fans on Twitter, etc. Some are pro him, some are against. There's captaincy debates, etc. But 5 centuries in the 2019 World Cup, well deserving, right? Anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, it's really fantastic. I think this is something that is a huge honor in the sports award category in India, right? I think only 45 sports people have received this award till date. And interestingly, what I didn't know, and this is why reading up is great, right, when this happens, only 4 till now were cricketers, right? So you would expect a country...
3? He's the 4th.
I think he's the 5th. No, you're right. He's the 4th.
I think he's the 4th, yeah.
It's 4th, yeah. So 45 total, 4 including Rohit Sharma. The only guys who got it before him are Sachin Tendulkar in 97, 98. You have to think about that's the Sharjah series when he gave the whole country hope. MS Dhoni in 2007 and 8 after winning that T20 World Cup and taking over the team. Virat Kohli in 2018 because I think it was just too late. He should have got it earlier than that. And then Rohit Sharma for his honestly fantastic performance in the last 7-8 years and best year in 2019. So it really puts things into perspective for you when there are only 4 out of 45. It kind of made me happy as well that, you know, other sports people are getting recognized as well. But huge honor for Rohit Sharma.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And then we can quickly touch on the Arjuna Award as well. Deepti Sharma and Ishant Sharma, right? So I know, Varun, you follow the men's game more closely. Ishant, what a up and down career he's had. At one point he was written off, he was gone, and now he's almost a sure shot selection in the test side. He's the senior statesman for the test bowling lineup. I remember, as fans who are our generation, we remember what it was like when we didn't have test bowlers at the caliber of our opposition. And today you have Umesh sitting on the bench often, Bhuvi not in consideration because you got, Bumrah, Ishant. Like, you just feel glad for Ishant, right? That's the only way I can think about it. You just feel happy for his success. He's just such a hard worker.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ishant Sharma is that example of, you never give up. Just keep working hard and chase excellence. This sounds very cliched, but chase excellence and then everything else will follow. So Ishant Sharma is a great example of that. I still remember, I think in his 2008 series against Australia, he kept getting Ricky Ponting out. And there was one particular spell where he may have bowled 7 or 8 overs on the trot, troubled Ricky Ponting so much. And I think Ganguly or Dhoni at that point, I can't remember the captaincy. This is why my memory is terrible. But the captain was ready to take him off. And Sehwag then ran up and said, he's a youngster. I've seen him bowl for Delhi. He can bowl more. So don't worry about giving him a break. And so he was given the ball for one more over and he got Ricky Ponting in that over. So I remember that very distinctly. And so really kudos to Ishant Sharma.
Yeah, and just to add on a little bit about Deepti, right? We talked about Kailas. Obviously, she's earlier in her career and hasn't played as much cricket, but just incredible milestones for Deepti Sharma as well. As you think about it, she has 188 in an ODI, which is the highest score to date in a women's ODI by an Indian. She was the fastest, I think tied, but was the fastest to 1,000 runs and the fastest to have a double, not dissimilar to Kailas, but 1,000 runs and 50 wickets. So very accomplished all-rounder. Great to see the recognition. Nice to give the cricketers in these times when they're not playing enough cricket an opportunity to be in the news, to be talked about, to be celebrated. So congratulations to all the recipients. And that brings us to the end of this week's show. Thank you, as always, for tuning into the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. As you know, we're on social media at One Tip One Hand, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all at One Tip One Hand. You can write to us, contact@onetiponehand.com. We'd love to hear from you guys. We are less than a month away from the IPL, so getting really revved up and super, super excited to engage with all of you guys and watch the IPL and play together. The new sponsors are the Dream 11, who replaced Vivo, so that's going to be interesting. We obviously run a fan league every year for fantasy cricket, so make sure you stay tuned to get details on that. And as always, thank you very much for being loyal listeners. We will see you back next week. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta. I'm B50 on Twitter. I am the host of Paisa Vaisa, the show that talks money. On my show, I speak to experts from every field of money and finance, from stock markets, equities, debt funds, credit cards, life insurance, every possible area of money and finance that you can think of. We even did an episode on cryptocurrency. I've got fantastic guests from mutual funds to personal finance experts everywhere. Robo-advisory, startups, just name it, we've got it. At Paisa Vaisa, we help you make smart decisions about money. You work hard for money. Now make your money work hard for you. New episodes out every Monday, and you can listen to my show on the IVM Podcast app or any other podcasting app that you have.
Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, Don Bradman, and now Cyrus Brocha. Okay, probably not in the right company. I mean, Don Bradman is Australian. But it's called Cyrus Says, a wonderful show about everything. Find the show on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts.